Your Majesty, fellows of IVA, distinguished guests, Fatih Birol, now mic'd up, that's very good. Thank you for being here today. It's a great honor and pleasure to welcome you all to the Royal Academy of Engineering Sciences. We are especially grateful to His Majesty for your presence and lending a lot of weight to what we're trying to do here today. I would also like to warmly welcome Dr. Fatih Birol, the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency. We are most privileged to have you here. You have a very, very long experience in the energy questions of the world. So we're here now today for the discussion and high-level seminar on competitiveness on the age of electricity, a topic that goes to the very heart of the global transformation now underway. Electrification and the green transition are reshaping the industrial structures all over the world, value chains, and the competitive dynamics as well across the world. Access to reliable, affordable, and clean electricity is rapidly becoming one of the most decisive factors for economic growth, strength, technological leadership, and long-term resilience, not the least. This challenge is of global nature, but it's also highly relevant for Europe, and not the least for our own country, Sweden. Sweden has a strong foundation to build upon, a largely fossil-free electricity system, competitive electricity prices, and a strong industrial base and an innovative entrepreneurial ecosystem that all have to work together. These advantages have served us historically well, but they will not automatically secure our position for the future. The rapid electrification of industry, transport, and digital infrastructure, including the growing demands from data centers and artificial intelligence, will place unprecedented pressure on any energy system going forward. At the same time, Europe must modernize aging infrastructure while competing with regions that are investing at a remarkable speed and scale. The essential question is therefore not whether we will undergo this transition, but how we ensure that it strengthens competitiveness rather than undermine it. Long-term competitiveness, a topic which is extremely important for Sweden, both for nations and for companies, depends on our ability to combine climate ambition with productivity, innovation, and secure energy supplies. In this context, it's crucial that politics and business work closely together, hand in hand. The energy transition cannot succeed without close alignment between public policy and private investments, innovation, and other long-term undertakings which will lead to a predictable energy source and energy supply. Governments must provide clear, predictable, and long-term frameworks for this to happen. And this will be regulation, permitting financing, permitting processes, market design, etc., that enable industry to invest and innovate with confidence. At the same time, business has a responsibility to drive technological development, scale solutions, and translate policy ambitions into real-world impact. When policy and industry reinforce one another, their transition becomes much easier and much more powerful as in the years to come. Equally important is cooperation beyond national borders. The energy transition depends on well-functioning global value chains, international standards, and cross-border collaboration, whether it concerns electricity markets and regulations itself, grids, critical raw materials, or advanced technologies. No country can manage this transformation by itself. Europe must remain open, globally integrated, and engaged, while at the same time strengthening our strategic capabilities and the resilience. This is precisely why IVA brings this discussion to the table today. As an independent academy of engineering sciences, IVA serves as a platform and a bridge between research and policy, between academia and industry, and between Sweden and the international community. Our mission is to contribute to sustainable and resilient societal development through knowledge, technology, and innovation. Electrification and the competitiveness is at the core of our mission here at IVA, and we see it as our responsibility to facilitate informed dialogue grounded in science, engineering, and practical experience. Today's program reflects the scope and the complexity of challenges ahead, from energy security and power systems to industrial electrification and access to critical raw materials itself. We begin by grounding this discussion in policy and national perspectives. So I'm very pleased to first welcome State Secretary Maja Lundbäck from the Ministry of Climate and Enterprise, who will share a Swedish perspective on the energy security and the competitiveness. Next, we turn to a more global perspective, where Dr. Birol will place today's discussion in international context and address the shared theme of energy security competitiveness in this age of electricity, a challenge that transcends borders and requires coordinated action across countries, sectors, and institutions. With that, I once again welcome you here to IVA and to this seminar, and let's begin. Maja.
Your Majesty, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, Marcus, for those remarks and for the introduction. It is, of course, an honor to stand here today and talk about this really, really important topic of electrification. Electrification is one of the highest prioritized areas within this government's policies we have seen the last years as well, and it will be one of the most important areas future on as well in politics. Because why is electrification and energy policy so important? From a governmental perspective, it is about energy policy is also about security policy. It is also about industry policy, because energy policy and electrification, especially here in Sweden, is foundation for a well-functioning democracy. What is the role of the state when the government within the electricity market? Why do we care about how we build out our electricity system, how we can meet the demand? It's because without electricity, we have no democracy, we have no kingdom of Sweden. Because supply of energy is the foundation of what we have today, and I think it's really important to remind us of that and what we see, especially what we see happening in Ukraine every day and how targeted their electricity and energy system are. And also to remind ourselves to not take our electricity system and our development here for granted. This is really important. And to stand here to represent Sweden, the Swedish government here, and as one of the most electrified countries, it is amazing to see how we can combine so much prosperity that what we have in this country with innovation. We can have good welfare, we can be a competitiveness partner in the global market in so many ways, and we can have and see and achieve our climate goals to make sure that we live in a good environment as well and contribute to this sustainable world. We are the country that can really see and shown how we can combine security of supply, competitiveness, and sustainability. They are not trade-offs, which we are talking about quite a lot. They are building on each other. Without security of supply, we have no competitiveness. Without competitiveness, we do not have the strength to look at the sustainability. Somehow, the hierarchy of Maslow's triangle is here to remind us what's the most important, and that is that we are safe to make sure that we can move forward. But I also have some reflections on what does it mean to have a highly electrified country as well, because we are in the front runner here when it comes to electrification and reduce our dependency on fossil fuels. It means also when you're electrifying a lot of functions important to society, it means that we are highly dependent on electricity prices. They will affect not only the daily-to-daily about how we can spend our money, it also affects the inflation, the state budget, and how we are working, operating in this country. We have to remind us of that. So stable electricity prices will become highly, highly more important the more we electrify. And this will also come to the rest of the world, because in the age of electrification, we will not be alone in this. But that is something we need to take on when we are looking forward to this. But also, we are building a dependency on a single energy system. We know that for sure. That means that we need to build an energy system that can combine to acknowledge this and take care of the risks we are building into, because we have this dependency on one single system. And that is also making what we have also seen from Dr. Birol and the organization of IVA as well, that we also will get really depending on supply chain and critical minerals as well, which is really highlighted that we can support ourselves with this crucial system. And that's why the Swedish government have had a new energy policy. I may say that maybe it's not so new anymore, because it's been here for quite a while now, but we have a policy that is more demand-oriented, because if we know where the demand for energy is, then we can plan and organize how to meet that demand with the right amount of grids and the right amount of production with the right abilities at the right time. And that is why we have two almost new goals to say. The planning goal and the planning target of 300 terawatt-hours, a commitment from the state to make sure that we can meet the demand that is necessary for our industries and households to gain electricity, but also at the same time build out that with a goal for security of supply, because that is the foundation of our independence. And if we look around in the world with the tension we are seeing right now, it is really, really important that we can expand our power system together with and make the security of supply greater and greater. Because the more we electrify, the more dependent we will be about the electricity supply to the end customer. So to just remake the energy policy to not go about how to replace fossil fuels with renewables, but to lift up the performance of the power system, it's the most important thing we can do now. Because we also have this really, really good starting point here in Sweden. We are almost fossil-free electricity in this country. That is fantastic. And now we have to start to see how can we expand this. And here we have lessons learned to share with the rest of the world as well. And to do that, these goals, maybe they do not seem too much to the world, but they are important because they are applied in the Swedish parliament now. And that is also the guidelines for how we can adopt the electricity market to be able to be more demand-oriented. So we have an electricity market that will support the idea of how to meet the electricity demand and connect new consumers to the system, together with how we can plan the grids and power producers as well. But it also comes down to the energy preparedness and our total defense capabilities as well, because we need to be able to restore and we need to be able to protect our electricity system in a greater extent than we have been so far. And that's why also the government has funded a lot of more money when it comes to the energy total defense budget as well. But it's also really important that we can give support to all fossil-free production, including nuclear. We will need to have every fossil-free production source we can have to meet this and be able to control within our country, so we can say that we are safe, because that will also attract people to come here, invest in Sweden, because we have a secure and stable electricity and energy supply. But also, which is really important, one of the main points we are here today, we have also made huge increased funding when it comes to R&D and energy R&D especially, because it's really important to have that so we can move forward. We can look at the tension around the world now. It is a hard time right now, but we also need to look into what we can do to move forward, because we need hope. We need hope and we need friends to make sure that we can go into having long-lasting relationships with countries around us and with those that we can rely on in a better way to make ourselves stronger, because a stronger Sweden, that means a stronger Nordic, and a stronger Nordic means a stronger Europe. So that's why it's really, really, really amazing to stand here in front of you today and also to be able to listen to Dr. Birol later on. Thank you very much.
Your Majesty, State Secretary, Dr. Birol, distinguished guests. So my name is Bo Disfalusi. I know some of you. I will serve as the moderator for the rest of this high-level event. As for myself, I have a long background in energy policy and in energy analysis. I hope everyone is comfortably seated. Yes, you can lean back a little bit. Okay, because in a second you are going to listen to the most boring man in the world. Now, this judgment comes from this guy himself. Most other people, including his 90-year-old mother, seem to have another opinion. And you could read about this in Svenska Dagbladet today. There's a long article on Dr. Birol. But it seems that everybody wants to listen to him, to have his advice. And by everybody, I don't mean just people in the street. I mean statesmen and women. I mean researchers. I mean policymakers all over the world. So I mean, Fatih is ranked among the top 100 most important persons in the world, and in the energy field, he's just the superstar. So we should, as State Secretary Lundbeck said, we should be very happy to have him here. He has been awarded many of the world's most prestigious prizes, one of them being the Swedish Order of the Polar Star, and regularly he's quoted probably more than anyone else in the international energy scene. So Dr. Birol was introduced by Dr. Wallenberg a second ago, so I won't say very much more. It's just a great honor to have you here. Fatih Birol, who is the Executive Director of International Energy Agency in Paris. And it's a special pleasure for me, as this guy is a former colleague and also a very dear friend. So I'll ask you to step up to the scene, Fatih. While you do this, I'll just say that after Dr. Birol's presentation, there might be room for 1 or 2 questions from the audience. And if you want to address a question to Dr. Birol, please, first of all, raise your hand. Secondly, use the microphone, which is at the side of your table, because not only so that people in the room can hear you, but also because this high-level meeting is being recorded. So having said that, Fatih, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Your Majesty, Madam State Secretary, Mr. Warbeck, very good afternoon to all of you. It is really a great honor to be here in front of you. It's a real privilege. Thank you very much. I am going to share with you some of my thoughts about Europe, the energy world, electricity. But it is not in my notes, but I thought, since we are in the Royal Academy of Engineering, I share with you one thought I have about engineers, being an engineer. In fact, Madam President, if you invite me next time, I want to talk about this topic, which is the following. I believe engineers in the society, wherever you go, don't get the recognition that they deserve. Okay, there are many engineers here. Because we built critical infrastructure, grids, bridges, planes, digital grids and everything. But compared to the contribution they make to the society, I think they're a bit on the background. So this is something that the engineers need to raise their voice to get what they really deserve from the society. I thought I should tell this in this context while I am here. But once again, thank you very much for inviting me. I will share my views on energy now. So, dear colleagues, let me start with you about Europe. I think today we all know, and I think we all acknowledge that Europe is going through very difficult times in terms of its economy, competitiveness, in terms of its energy security. And I personally believe it is big time due to the, in my view, three colossal strategic mistakes we made as Europe in our energy policies in the last few decades. I want to tell you what are they, what I believe, and so that it may be something that we understand for the future. The first one is over-reliance of Europe on one single country for a strategic good, which is natural gas and Russia. You do not, in the energy world, you do not rely heavily on one single country, one single trade route, and one single company. And Europe made this mistake. And we can discuss if you wish. We have been warning on this since 2004 in many instances. This is number one mistake. Number two mistake is that the Europe, again strategic one in my view, Europe turned its back to nuclear power. In the end of 1990s, more than 30% of the European electricity came from nuclear power. But Europe turned its back, and now very soon it will go down about 15%. In my view, it was a big mistake as well. The third mistake comes on the clean energy technologies and innovation. Today, dear colleagues, in the year 2025, of all power plants, all type of power plants built in the world, 2/3 of these power plants are solar panels. And 85% of the solar panels are manufactured in China. But I go back again to Europe. 25 years ago, it was Europe that kicked the ball for solar energy. It was Italy, it was Spain, it was Germany with subsidies, but after a while, they dropped the ball, and China took it forward, and China is the leader now. So technological innovation, technology policies need long-term vision and a very consistent push for that. As a result of these three strategic mistakes, in my view, Europe has now a cost disadvantage vis-à-vis others, and the energy security is a challenge in many fronts. Now, what can we do? What should we do in Europe now? We need to find ways to come back, especially our industrial manufacturing competition part. First of all, we need to build things, and the biggest challenge today building things are in many cases very complex and burdensome licensing, permitting procedures. We need to do three things: simplify, simplify, simplify. Because this is taking so much time, this costs so much money and delay. I do not say completely deregulate everything, some people say, but we have to simplify, and this is really possible with nimble governments, with focused governments. This is the first thing I would suggest. The second thing I would suggest is Europe needs a new industrial master plan. And in this industrial master plan, we have to pay attention to two things. One, the existing industries that we have, they have difficulties to compete with the industries in China, in US, in Middle East because of the cost disadvantage. I believe, at least in some of them, we have to find ways to bridge the cost gap for those industries. Otherwise, those industries, starting with petrochemical and others, will face major challenges, and this may end up with serious unemployment consequences, which in turn may well have, in some countries, some undesired political consequences. So this is the one part of the industrial master plan I have in mind. And the second one is for the new industries, clean energy technologies, Europe has to pick up its battles. In which areas Europe can still have chance to be a real player together with others. There are some areas, I am sorry to say, that we missed the boat. C'est passé, it is over. For example, in my view, for solar panels, Europe being a key player, it is not possible anymore. But there are some areas that we can, in the clean energy technologies, we can be still be very strong, such as the offshore wind. And this is something that we have a lot of expertise here. And if we are not able to revitalize our industry, namely support the existing facilities, manufacturing sector through different ways, plus not to be a key player in the new emerging technologies, Europe's economic power in the global context, therefore political power, is, I believe, at stake. Now, I was telling the colleagues at lunch today, I am going to, next week, to Davos. It is the 19th year in a row, and I know one of the things will be talking about Europe bashing, especially when people come around the world, in different parts of the world, the leaders and so on. And I think here, I want to balance it out a bit. I think we shouldn't forget Europe's achievements and Europe's muscles we have. The single market with 450 million consumers, second largest economy, when we put all together, the largest exporter of the world, and the center of innovation. And dear colleagues, I travel around the world. I go to Asia, Latin America, Africa, North America. Everybody wants to go to Europe, live in Europe, visit Europe. Europe's social values, humanitarian values, democratic values are inspiration, hundreds of millions around the world. We shouldn't forget this. It is a very important factor that we need to take into account, and that we are still a giant in the global economy. And we should, in my view, behave accordingly. The main challenge for Europe, in my view, today, and I finish the Europe part here, is the difficulty to have I'm talking about the energy now, a single clear strategy. And when we had the strategy and unity in the past, we have seen again and again how successful Europe was. I'll give you 3 examples. 2008-2009 financial crisis, whatever it takes, that context. Europe went through the financial crisis. Then, second, COVID-19. Europe was able to put vaccination, bulk of its population in a very quickly, very speedily time. And third, when Russia invaded Ukraine and there was no gas, and Europe went through this period, kept still the lights on, and economy didn't collapse completely. So in all these three examples, financial crisis, COVID, and the energy, we had clear vision and unity of the European countries. And I think this is what Europe needs now, especially in this context when we come to energy and in the, as our topic says, in the age of electricity. Dear colleagues, at the IEA, where I work, one of the things I like a lot is my colleagues Bo and Per, they are here, to find names and the one-liners and so on. So when I look at the numbers of one of our major reports, I saw that the global electricity consumption, world electricity consumption, is not growing, it is exploding. We have never seen global electricity consumption increasing so fast. It is driven by three new additional factors. Number one is the artificial intelligence and data centers. They need a lot of electricity. Number two, electric cars and trucks. They are growing around the world, not only in Europe, not only in China, but around the world. And number three, in fact, this is the main driver, you wouldn't know in Sweden, it is the increasing number of air conditioners around the world. In the United States today, 90% of the households, they have air conditioners. China is the same, Japan is the same, 85, 90, China is about 70. Nigeria, it is 5%, Nigeria. India, 18%, Indonesia, 19%. With the increasing income levels, people, when they get a bit money, and with the temperature increasing because of climate change, they buy air conditioner, it's a big driver for electricity consumption. So all these three, AI, electric cars, and air conditioners give an additional boost to electricity consumption. So I thought we can call now, we are entering the age of electricity. Remember the romance of the Emile Zola, the Industrial Revolution, coal, age of coal. They are coming. The Industrial Revolution was fueled by coal, age of coal, dominant, followed by age of oil and gas, and we are still there giving the dominant fuel. But now, age of electricity is coming very strongly, and in my view, Europe should be the leader of it, at least one of the leaders. I see Europe's future being electric. This is not a choice, this is an imperative for Europe, because Europe will never, tomorrow, discover oil here, gas here, something else there. If we want to be prosperous, if we want to have our security, we have to electrify our economies. And I am sorry to tell you that we are far from being there. 10 years ago, in Europe, the share of electricity in total energy was 20%. China was also 20%, 10 years ago. Europe today is still 20%, China is 32%. But I know Sweden is one of the leaders with close to 40%, but Europe average is very low. And in fact, Europe can benefit from this, because in Europe, we have a lot of companies that manufacture grids, transformers, electrical appliances, efficiency appliances, and cables, all of them, and including Sweden. But we have been a bit slow. Now it is time. I think almost all the countries in Europe agree, and our colleagues in Brussels, including the President, Ursula von der Leyen, agrees we have to push the button for future of Europe being electric. And it is important for our energy security as well. What is in front of us? What we need to do for the future of electric for Europe? First of all, we need a lot of electricity. It is nuclear, it is renewables, and others. But here, having a lot of electricity is not enough. In order to people to use electricity, it should be at affordable price. Even if you have a lot of electricity, if it is expensive, people not switch from other things to electricity. And here, two things come to my mind. One, first, the electricity price setting in Europe is based on the natural gas prices. We have to think whether or not it is still right, it is still in the interest of Europe. This is one. Second, we have to think how we tax the electricity prices. Can we be a bit more creative in order to incentivize the use of electricity even more in certain, for certain consumers? We have to look at this, because if we are not able to make the electricity affordable, even though we have electricity, we will not be able to make this switch happen. Another area that we have to, if we want to see electrification goes very strongly, is the grids. You can have a power plant, but if there is no grid, enough grid, bringing the electricity from the power plant to the homes or the factories, it doesn't mean anything. Last year was a bit of a, I would say, pity for Europe. Last year in Europe, for example, when we talk about the renewables, the record number of renewable power plants added to the system, 77 gigawatts. Record, we have never seen this. But the question is, the issue is, dear colleagues, 77 gigawatts was added, but more than 500 gigawatts of renewables power plants were ready, but we didn't have enough grid, therefore they were just not able to be connected to the grid. The lack of grid. It is something like you built the best car in the world, very efficient, very fast, very beautiful, but you don't have a street to go. It's exactly the same story. So therefore, acceleration of building the grids will be, in my view, critical if we want to see the future of European economy is electric. Dear colleagues, two other issues I want to bring to your attention. One is on the critical minerals and supply chains. And this is, in my view, one of the most important geopolitical issues of our day. What does critical mineral mean? These are the minerals which are important for our daily lives. Some of us may think that the critical minerals are important for the solar panels, windmills, and batteries, but this is only one part of the problem, small part. Critical minerals are needed for everything, from the drones, namely the defense industry, to the issues of the manufacturing, from manufacturing to the artificial intelligence, everything. The critical minerals are important. Now, and this critical mineral story has two parts. One, getting the mineral extracted from under the ground. Second, to refine it, clean it, and to make the product. If we have only the mineral extract from mineral under the ground, it is completely useless. You have to refine it, make it ready to be used. And today, one country, China, has an oversized dominance of that. More than 75% of the refining capacity of critical minerals is in China. And China has a huge cart in the sense. If China decides, I am not going to export this or that critical minerals to this or that country for X, Y, and Z reasons, it can block or paralyze the system. And we have seen this last April. There were some export restrictions for rare earth elements, and the car manufacturers around the world had a big panic attack. What will happen now? So this is a major issue, and China here, both for extraction of minerals and, more importantly, refining of these minerals, have a very, very strong hand. Now, many countries has the minerals, but for example, in Sweden, we have some minerals, we have some mines, but again, coming back to the issue of licensing, permitting, and so on, in many countries, not only Sweden, it takes a lot of time. And even if we have the mines, if we have the minerals, refining it is very difficult. And China, in my view, now countries, now US, Europe, Canada, Australia, others are waking up. But at least there's a 10 years of a gap between China and the rest of the world. If we can narrow this gap or not is an important question. And here, of course, one thing about China and Europe, I want to tell you. China is a big economic power, and how Europe should work with China needs a careful consideration. Whether or not there are some pragmatic and mutually beneficial areas that Europe and China can work together, in my view, needs to be thought carefully without having a dogmatic approach here, because this is the current geopolitical context, in my view, gives everybody the justification to review some of the policies we have established some time ago. Dear colleagues, before finishing, an area that is very close to my heart as an engineer is nuclear power. Some 4 years ago, I said in a meeting that President Macron organized, nuclear is set to make a comeback. And today, I can assure you, nuclear is here and made a very strong comeback. I give you 3 reasons why I think we can justifiably say that nuclear is back globally. Number one, 2025, last year, as we have rightly estimated, is the year where the nuclear electricity generation is the highest in the history globally. We have never generated so much electricity from nuclear power. This is number one. Number two, today, around the world, more than 70 gigawatts of nuclear power plants under construction, the highest in the last 3 decades. And number three, there is a huge interest and money flowing to small modular reactors in many parts of the world. So therefore, I think I can assure you that nuclear is making a comeback, and now the decisions, the right decisions need to be made. And in the nuclear, the right decisions, what are the right decisions? Whom I am going to work with? Who will be my partner? This is an extremely important decision. Because nuclear power partnership is, forgive me my analogy here, it is like a Catholic marriage. You cannot divorce easily. If you decide to go with country A, you are starting a journey 50 years together. So therefore, when we choose our partner in the nuclear journey, we should think, can I trust this partner next 50 years? It is, of course, not easy to make a projection of the countries and companies' future, but at least in addition to the economic and technology factors, these factors need to be well taught. And if we make a mistake here, then we can go back to the Germany and Russian gas. So I think it is very good to be aware of that. Maybe one final thing on nuclear. The thing with the nuclear is to see nuclear, dear colleagues, to be part of our energy mix, especially in Europe, I believe very important. It is good for the, not only for the economy, electricity, but the gravitas of the continent. And this needs the support of the governments. There's a security aspect here. So in the absence of government support for many nuclear projects, it will be very difficult for nuclear, given being a very capital intensive nuclear, we see a big push in Europe. When you look at the last 5 years, 85% of all nuclear power plants built in the world were in China and Russia. So therefore, in the market economies, if you want to see nuclear get a push, a move, we really need to see that governments are supporting the nuclear power. I know that my colleague Bo is looking at his watch all the time, but I finish with one thing. I'm sorry to tell this, because I deal about energy security. Dear colleagues, I work on energy since many years, working with many countries, going through many difficult, different areas. Energy and geopolitics were always interwoven. But what we have now, today, is exceptional. I see the dark and the long shadow of geopolitics on energy very, very visible in everything. So therefore, energy security becomes, in my view, national security. So therefore, I myself have 3 golden rules for energy security. Number 1 is diversification. Don't put all the eggs in one basket. diversify as much as possible. Not one single country, not one single trade route, not one single company, this is as I said. Number two, and this is very important, predictability. Energy investments are capital intensive, and the investors to energy are like butterflies. If they see there is a change in the government policies, they fly away. So you should put predictability here so the investment come. If they see that investors, this can change later on, this policy, then they are hesitating to put money there. So this is a challenge for the democracies here. We go 4 years, 5 years, etc. So therefore, it is important to, especially for the long-linked projects, to give a predictability to the investors. And third one is my modest, humble golden rule. Third one is the international cooperation. No country is an energy island. We have to be. They are linked through emissions. Okay, emission coming from Johannesburg, the impact on Sweden has the same effect on the emission coming from Chicago. Emissions don't have a passport. Technological innovation goes from one country to another. The trade, energy trade. So it is important international cooperation, and within the international cooperation, it is now extremely important to find the right partners. And the right partners may not be always the one which gives you the cheapest option. We have to think, in my view, long term. So, dear colleagues, I want to finish my words by saying that the world is entering a time where the geopolitics will play a critical role in the decisions of the governments, industries, our choices. And at the same time, we see electricity is and will be even more important in our energy system. And I hope Europe, Sweden make the right decisions to continue to be the inspiration to millions of people around the world. And, Madam President, please don't forget the engineers who does everything for ourselves. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatih. I think we would like to hear as much of you as we could. Unfortunately, I promised you in the beginning that there might be room for questions to Dr. Birol. Unfortunately, they won't. So don't tell anybody, but there won't be any questions.
I talk too much. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Fatih. Now we'll have 3 brief interventions from researchers, industrialists. So I first call on Johan Mörnstam, who is the CEO of E.ON Nordic. And Johan is going to talk about flexibility and its importance in the energy system. So please, Johan.
Thank you, Bo. So His Majesty, Dr. Birol, State Secretary, and also distinguished guests, it's an honor to stand here and talk about flexibility. But before I do that, I would like to broaden the perspective and not only speak to flexibility, because sometimes we tend to speak about specific elements in the system, and it is really an energy system. So I think it's also important to take a holistic perspective to this. We see that the electrification is clearly here, but we also see some obstacles, and we also see a raised voice and concern about affordability that Dr. Birol alluded to. And I think that is also something that we need to really consider as both a threat and something that needs to be addressed to create, I would say, acceptance, but also to boost the energy transition to go for electrification. And as Marcus alluded to in the beginning, it's not about if we are going to do the energy transition, if we are going to do the electrification. It's more about how, and how we do it in an affordable way. Here, I think it's really important to say that from a system perspective, it's really about taking down the cost for the entire system. And that means that when we talk about system, we do not only talk about electricity and electrification. We need to talk about the whole energy system, so to say. So it's about electrification, but it's also about heat. And Sweden has something that I think we should honor and see as a precious asset, and that is district heating. In Germany, they have locked themselves into gas. In Sweden, we actually did the Wärmewende that they are talking about in Germany in the 70s. And the district heating can play a very important role, not only from a cost-efficient energy system perspective, but also from a resilience, because it's local and it provides both heat and can support the electricity system. Before I go into flexibility, I would just like to highlight one thing, and that is that we have taken the stance to, as E.ON, to look into how can we make this energy transition in a more affordable way to really address the concerns about the costs. And by doing so, we have a report, and I will not go through all the details, but we have found 27 initiatives that are crucial to make this energy transition in an affordable way until 2045 to reach the targets. And by addressing those 27 initiatives, we see that we can actually avoid costs of 500 billion Swedish kronor until 2045. That also means that the system costs for a single household is 16% lower. That means that if we talk about share of wallet, that means that today we roughly have a share of wallet of around 5% of energy costs for a household, that we can take it down to slightly higher than 4%. So a significant decrease, which also means that affordability for both households but also industries will play a very important role. Even if I will not touch upon the 27 initiatives, I will touch upon a few. Because those 27 initiatives, we group them in 3 categories. The first one is really about the right timing. Because at the end of the day, we talked about if we have generation but we don't have the distribution grids, it doesn't help. If we have the distribution grids and not the generation, it doesn't help either. And we obviously also need to have the consumption. So the timing is really critical to make this affordable and also to make sure that the energy system is there when the demand is there. But on the other side, that we also have a demand, that it goes hand in hand. And what we have found is that the costs of running the energy system a little bit in advance compared to lagging and not having the capacity available when the demand is there is massively higher for the society than not having it ready. So with that, we mean that it's super important to take this holistic view and look into a joint planning between the industry, the society, and the energy companies to make sure that we can really have a holistic view on the value chain to meet this in an efficient way. We talk a lot about that we don't have the capacity ready in the grids when the demand is there. And if I look into the queue of E.ON today, and we have, I would say, 1/4 of the market in Sweden on the distribution side, we have 63 gigawatt in our queue. And just to put that in perspective, 63 gigawatt in comparison to the top load in Sweden, which is 25 gigawatt, it tells us something that it's about electrification, but it's also not acceptable to have this 63. To be honest, if I challenge the queue, we also know that there are some zombie requests, there are some double counting. And actually in Germany, they did an exercise in terms of putting up a fee for applying for the queue, because we see that there is a lot of strategizing in terms of going into the queue. And that exercise showed that 65% of the queue disappeared. But even if we take out 65% of the queue, it's still significant. So from that perspective, I think it's important, again, what we talked about, to streamline processes, to make sure that we have permitting processes that are fit for purpose. Personally, I have been working on a specific high voltage line that actually took 14 years from initiation to actually inauguration. And that is simply not acceptable. However, it's not black and white. Even if we have capacity constraints in some areas of our grid, we also have overcapacity in some grids. There are spare capacity. So I also believe that one thing that is very important is also to talk about where have we go-to zones, where we can establish industries, where we have specific other prerequisites that makes it possible to have a fast track into that. One example is, for example, data centers, which I know is a tough discussion right now, whether data centers then should push out industries. But actually, if we can point out go-to centers, I think the more electrons we can get into the system, the more we use this entire system, and the more electrons can share the burdens of the cost. So I just want to point out this holistic perspective of this. The other thing that we are pointing out is to ensure a fair transition. We also need to make sure that we can equalize costs across the country. And one of those is the price areas that we have in Sweden, which is not helping us to create either the acceptance nor an equal competition landscape. But it doesn't stop with that. Today we also have very different landscape in terms of the pricing and the cost of the distribution grid. And we are also advocating for basically one price across Sweden that can be equalized behind the scenes. So basically no change in regulation, but basically that we pay the same fee for the grid across Sweden. And then when it comes to flexibility, to use the electricity system in a smarter way, there really the flexibility comes in. And here I think is a notion that sometimes we don't need to invest what we invest in the infrastructure, but that is really required to continue to increase the investments that we do in steel and copper, so the classical investments that are being done in the electricity grid. However, we also know that we can increase the utilization factor of the electricity system, hence also the distribution grids. But one thing that is important here is that we have, and Dr. Birol, you alluded to it, that we are running massive investment programs as an energy industry. Just E.ON in Europe, the coming 5 years, we are investing over 40 billion euros across Europe. And with that said, to acquire that capital in the capital market, we need stability, we need predictability. So rules and regulations need to really be stable, and we need to have foresight on that. And that is a very important point from both politics, but also from the regulation. But it's also to make sure that there is a clear incentive to use flexibility. So basically not only go for investing in steel and copper, but actually use other instruments where it's possible to run the grids in a more efficient way. And then when it comes to district heating, I think when we speak about flexibility here, district heating today stands for 10 gigawatt of installed capacity in Sweden. And we just learned 25 gigawatt is the top consumption in Sweden. So district heating plays a significant role in the Swedish energy system. And that is something that I think we should also make sure that we safeguard from an affordability perspective. But there is another point based on flexibility, because actually by connecting the different energy carriers to connect district heating with the electricity system, we can also again use flexibility as an enabler to use the energy system in a more efficient way. And just let me give one example, and I see Bo is standing here and jumping, to then go into flexibility, because I think there are different elements of flexibility. First of all, the energy market becomes more and more complex. We see that the volatility is increasing. We also see that there will be capacity pricing on the electricity grid. That becomes super complex for consumers. So what we are doing and the industry is doing is to make sure that we, by using digitized solutions, enables our customers, private households, to participate effortless by providing flexibility into the system and also benefit from that without having any efforts and dealing with that complexity. The other part is the networks, where we provide flexibility platforms where industries, consumers, producers can actually provide their flexibility, and hence we can use the distribution grid in a more efficient way. But it's also to provide flexibility contracts to the ones that wants to connect in a way where they can also be able to connect faster, but also then provide their own flexibility into the system. And then last but not least, the example on district heating, which I think is so important. And that is that when we are now having higher volatility, when we have capacity pricing on the grid side, that means that sometimes we have extremely high prices, and sometimes actually the prices are very low. And when we add on the capacity pricing on distribution grid, we have idle capacity, we have overflow of power. We can actually use those low prices to boil water by electricity into the heating system, and where we are investing in accumulators. And that, I think, is a beautiful way of really optimizing the whole system with flexibility. I could talk about this forever, but I see that I need to stop. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Johan. I understand you could talk forever. I really appreciate what you say. This is like the energy transition, by the way. We are trying to accomplish very, very much in a short time today. So then I'll urge the coming speakers. The next speaker is also a well-known profile in Sweden, Professor Philip Johnson of the Chalmers University. So I ask Philip to talk about electrification and the complexities around electrification. So please, Philip.
Thank you very much. His Majesty, State Secretary, Dr. Birol, President of IVA, all. I will talk about opportunities and challenges and opportunities. Start with the challenges, and then hopefully to finish off with the opportunities on a bit more positive note. I'm very glad that what I'm going to say very confirm much of what Dr. Birol said. And I'm a researcher, so I have some slides, but they are without any equations. So challenges. I think you all know this, but I think the most important, and we also do research on this in interdisciplinary research projects, is of course to have a stability and predictability in policies. I think that is the main driving force for the transition. And that's also, of course, relates very much to that they're very capital intensive, high investments with long lead times, both on the supply side in the energy system, but also on the demand side for these industrial processes that we're going to invest in. Because it's not only about incremental improvements, it's new processes in industry, many of that could take 10 years or so to implement and requires this long-term policy. Here is an example of the European steel industry. You can see on the dark green is the historical investments, and on the left from you can see up to 2050 when the European emissions should be net zero, the carbon emissions, and there are two scenarios. And as you can see, this is just, you can focus on the light blue there, which is maybe the more realistic scenario. And it's about the same as when we invested historically at the maximum rate. So it's possible, of course, but the big difference is that when we did the historical investments, it's just to meet an increasing demand. Now it's about solving a problem with no sort of direct additional benefit from this. So this is an example of the tremendous challenge that we have to raise this money. The light green there, which actually corresponds to the maximum, if you take each member state, what the maximum investments historically, you end up in that. So that would be possible, but of course it's highly unlikely. I think you can all realize that. Then I think you all know also that, which was mentioned, permitting procedures is also a big challenge to make them more efficient. Securing raw materials, including rare earth metals, diversifying supply chains, and developing mining and circular economy strategies, both for technologies where we can actually recircle and develop processes to reuse materials. And I think this is a key. And actually, a good thing there is that we have most of these solar panels, wind power plants, and batteries and so on are not very old, so we have some years to develop these systems. So, opportunities. If I start with renewable energy, and if you look to the map here, we can see the potential in absolute numbers, terawatt hours, for solar and wind, different member states. And here, I think that the Nordic countries have a really good opportunity. We are not that many people in a very large countries with a large area, a long coastline and so on. And this is based on very detailed assessment that we put into our energy systems models in our research groups. And you can see Sweden there. It's very dark green, very high potential. Of course, we have removed obvious areas of conflict and so on. People always ask if Spain looks so nice, whereas Portugal is red. And that's because Spain is much bigger, but also because it's very hilly in Portugal and it's very deep outside, so it's difficult for offshore wind power. Another thing is the yearly net electricity balance. Sweden has now a net positive export of electricity. So that's fortunate, and also generally in the Nordic countries. Also France is quite well off there, and then there's the whole scale. So that's also good. And if you then look at what we have modeled, the electrification of these main industries, iron and steel, petrochemicals, and other industries, and you take the yearly net electricity balance divided by the electricity required for this electrification, at least we have come a little bit on the way, because we already have this excess of electricity produced on a net yearly basis, meaning that we have in general lower electricity prices in Sweden and in the Nordics. So that is a competitive advantage for us, which means that we should be able to be forerunners in this transition. Also not shown in the maps is that we, as was mentioned, we already have more or less a carbon-free electricity system in Sweden and Norway. Then, if you go to nuclear power, we have nuclear power plant sites, we have infrastructure, and here are the two candidates that was mentioned. I think maybe this wasn't mentioned. These are two small modular reactors. They're not so small, and they're based on conventional nuclear power technology, and the reactor technology itself has been proven. So the idea is to build, and this is by the Swedish largest utility, Vattenfall, and there are these two candidates, either to build 5 of the ones from GE Vernova on the Ringhals site, 5 of those, 300 megawatt boiling water reactor, and to the right you see the Rolls-Royce corresponding technologies for that will be a little bigger, so that will be then plan is to build 3 reactors on that site. And if we look now, irrespective of what happens with this technology, the mix, we need flexibility. We need what was Johan's mentioned here, smart electricity systems, because we'll have a much higher volatility in our electricity production and in our electricity price. So we need to be much smarter. And luckily, we have a lot of different technologies and systems that can contribute to this. It's everything from smart charging of electric vehicles, hydrogen storage for industry, smart control of heat pumps, batteries, and so on. And all this can contribute to this flexibility, and we have a lot of new technologies. So I think there is a lot of innovations, a lot of already happening. So this is really an opportunity for countries like Sweden and Europe in general. Another opportunity, I would say, which is also very important that the politicians stand behind, is the European climate policy. And then we have this Fit for 55 a package, which will really, in particular for the trading system, with the EU ETS system, emission trading system, will really cause electricity prices to go up. The price to emit CO2 to go up, and that's very important. And we have seen that it's a little bit shaky, and I think it will be more shaky when the prices go up because the free allowances will be phased out, and we expect the allowance prices to go up. So I really hope, and most research I think hope that the politicians can stand behind this. And this is my impression that also the industry wants this, and because since we in Europe and Sweden we are forerunners and we will benefit from this. And also, as was mentioned by Dr. Birol, energy transition goes hand in hand with increased energy security because we'll be less reliant on fossil fuels. Finally, what I would like to mention is these high capital-intensive investments in, for instance, the basic material industry, cement and steel, where a lot of emissions comes from. These cost very much, and that's required at stable policy. But if we perform a value chain analysis from the basic materials, where there's a lot of emissions, down to the final end products, obviously where there's a lot of value created, but not so much emissions, meaning that an obvious question is how much more expensive will a building of CO2-free cement or a car of CO2-free steel be than a conventional one? If we make such analysis and then calculate that, it will be a rather small share. And that is also something very big hope, because that means that for mankind to solve climate, the climate challenge is not a very big part of the economy. So I think this is without doing any other measures. We can do lighter constructions, more smarter use of materials and so on. So it may not need to be much higher at all. So I'll end on that, hopefully a little bit positive note. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philip. And I'm sorry to rush you, so we are a little behind schedule. We have a third short intervention. So I see Jan Moström, who is a experienced guy. You've been the CEO of LKAB mining company for 10 years now, so you know how to make things efficiently and quickly. Please, Jan.
Thank you. Thank you. I just tried to see which button I should press, perhaps that one. Well, our way of living, and that includes electrification, it starts in the mine. That's something I promote as a miner all the time. And we have been part of that, our company, for the past roughly 130 years. Our priority has been iron ore. We have a large and substantial footprint as an industrial mineral supplier also, but our main focus is to utilize and develop the world-class deposits in Kiruna, Malmberget, and in some extent also in Svappavaara. So how shall I come from iron ore producer, 80% of the European production, to rare earth elements? We are working to establish a value chain of rare earth elements, or I would say part, or perhaps the initiation of a value chain. When we commissioned the latest huge investment in the company almost 10 years ago, it was a main level in Kiruna mine. We immediately started to do studies what to do next. When we invest in the mining industry, we have extremely long lead times. So that means that we had to start immediately to see how will the world, the business, the market looks in the 2030s, 2040s, 2050s. So we started with conceptual studies and also with an extensive exploration program. And I don't go into all the details because then I talk probably 10 hours and not 10 minutes. But what's really is in focus when you do these types of calculations, studies, three simple things you have to focus: investment volumes, production costs, and revenues. I will focus on the revenues, important even for an iron ore company. There are four components that we really have to focus on. Volume. We are really depending on volume. The impact of marginal tonnage in the capital-intensive industry and operational costs that are fixed are huge. Generally, the most important part, how to increase volume. The other parts is how to increase the value of your product. And we started the turn of the century 100 years ago plus as a lump ore producers. As the market changed, we added beneficiation plants and start to produce fines to the market. And as the market continued to change, we added pelletization plants, and now we look into the next step, and that is spong iron. And that is to increase the premium value of iron ore. But then we come to the third element, that is byproducts. Every mineralization depends or actually consists of a main mineral, and that for our part is magnetite. But we also have other minerals that contains different materials. And we have had from the start in our iron ore phosphorus. Perhaps it was not a byproduct when we started, but steel making at that time was depending on phosphorus content, so it was an advantage in our ore to have phosphorus. But as the steel making process changed, then phosphorus became a penalty element, which means that we have to take away the phosphorus, otherwise our product will be decreased in revenues or even be impossible to sell to the market. So we introduced a process to take away the phosphorus and put it in our tailings facilities. So we will not have a penalty element, volume, premium product, byproduct, or a penalty element. As I said, we also initiated an extensive, it seems that it's lagging, an exploration program. And quite an extensive exploration program showing that, we have not the understanding of the Kiruna deposit as we thought. Fortunately, we did a huge discovery of a deposit close to the Kiruna deposit, and that was the Per Geijer deposit. And as I said, we started to look into byproducts with a focus on phosphorus. And we also understood that in this mineral that we could be, there it comes. In that same mineral, apatite, we also have a huge volume of REs. So what we continue to do is to see how to develop processes so that we can extract both phosphorus and REs as a byproduct, as it's so important for us to optimize our revenues for the huge investment going deeper down in our underground mines. And as you can see on these tables, we have an REs content in both Malmberget and Kiruna, which in some context we've been aware of, but the new deposit, the Per Geijer, has a huge part of REs. And also phosphorus. So what we started 5-6 years ago is to see how to extract this. Will it be profitable, and will it, so to say, add to our operations and ensure that we can continue to do this huge investment in our operations? REs is extremely complex. There are 17 of them. What we have been working with is the first 2 steps in these processes. One thing is what we partly do today. When we extract the phosphorus, we extract actually the apatite mineral and put it down in our tailings. The first step is how to increase the quality of that, so we will have a concentrate of apatite that are so clean as it can be. The next step, what we are working with, is how to leach, because this is just hydrometallurgical processes, how to leach this. And what we have been working with is leaching out the phosphorus and bring it into a phosphorus acid. I would say quite a common process and technology, but also how to extract the REs, because that is complex, complicated. In China, they have spent billions of dollars for decades to develop these processes. They are extremely complicated, and I will just try to guide you briefly the problems in this. And most of these processes has to be adopted to that specific mineral that you are extracting. It's very hard to make a general assumption and say that this assumption can apply to every mineralization. What we are doing in Luleå is that we are developing or investigation how to create a bulk concentrate. And a bulk concentrate means that we have all the REs in one concentrate. And then you have to go to the next step, really complicated. You have to take out each of these elements in a hydrometallurgical process and create an oxide. And that is the reason why we have been the largest owner now in a Norwegian startup that has developed an environmental friendly process to doing this. But that is just one step, and that is to create these oxides per REs. The next complicated step is refining it, because you have to make a metal of that oxide. And when you have that metal, then you're in one way or another halfway through, because that metal is not good enough to be used in what type of applications you want, regardless if it's permanent magnets or other applications. You have to make a powder of it, complicated generally with using hydrogen. You have to add your alloys, iron, borium. Then you have to sinter this material and put it into a metal. And when you have the metal, then you can do the application you want. So to create a sustainable value chain in Europe, that will be a challenge, and it will take time. And the problem we'll have, regardless of which part we do not have access to, then we will be totally depending on some other part to ensure that we have the foundation for electrification and our industry. Just to give you a brief flavor before they drag me from the chair, is what we are doing now, we are investing 800 million SEK in a demo plant in Luleå. And that demo plant, and you can get an understanding of the size. This is a lab, a demo plant, and that is just to ensure that our ability to scale up this process is just for the first step is calculable. So this is probably what you have to do for each step when you create this. So yes, we are totally depending on REs. We have a huge challenge to create a sustainable value chain in Europe. And at some stage we need to decide, do we want our part per billion of our demand in Europe, part per 1,000%, or do we want parts of percent in the resilient value chain in Europe to ensure that the industry, the defense industry, has access to these materials? So with that, thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jan, and apologies to everyone that we are trying to do very much in a short time. So now Winter Olympics are approaching. We expect lots of medals for Sweden, and I'll ask 4 people to run up here for the shortest panel discussion ever. And I hope that Eva forgives me and us for this, and His Majesty as well. So we have Jakob Stedman, who is the CEO of Blykalla. Yeah, here's Jakob. We have Johan Svenningsson, who is the country chairman and the CEO of Uniper Sweden. We have Emma Nerenheim, who is the managing director of the European Battery Alliance. And we have Mikael Norlander, who is the director of partnerships in Vattenfall. So all these are very well-known profiles in Sweden. So quick questions, quick responses. Jakob, how could small modular reactors, which you represent, contribute to Sweden's competitiveness within the next 10 to 15 years?
It's quite easy. We talked about that we need to thank you. We talked about that we need to electrify Europe, right? What Dr. Birol said, and nuclear power has become the most uncontroversial way to create clean baseload. I think there seems to be a lot of agreement on this. Small modular reactors makes it faster to build, and our aim, and this is not proven, but our aim is to build nuclear power at half the lifetime cost and get reactors up and running in less than 2 years once we have proven the concept. So there is, of course, this is innovation, this is new, but if we succeed, this will be a game changer in how we can produce power for our industries and homes and create prosperity for Sweden.
Thank you. Thank you. Johan, there was a lot of discussion about electricity price volatility. Now, as the CEO of a big company, what do you think could be the... First of all, is price volatility a problem or is it an opportunity, and what should be done about it?
Well, being a politician, it's both. I would say it's both an opportunity, but also a challenge. I mean, first of all, we should say that the electricity system is there for the industry and society. Society is not there. The electricity system is not there to the society. The industry should not be the balancing of the electricity system if it doesn't create value. I think we see that volatility creates value because we can then introduce new products. We can also make the system more efficient, like Johan said, that we utilize the current investments and we can make sure that we get the most value out of that. But we see it's also detrimental for the investments. Like in SC2 last year, we had a negative prices of 600 hours. In SC3, I think it was about 450 hours. That does not drive any investments at all. So we need to find a model that really provides the right amount of flexibility and handles the volatility. And there was a very excellent investigation done by you, Bo, that we need to implement, because there's a lot of good suggestions there. But we also need to make sure that we have a system that provides all the capabilities that we have, so we get a much more stable price, not taking out the volatility, which means that we need to build nuclear, because that is the baseload that we can build to meet the 300 terawatt target. Because hydropower is limited today. We will lose some in the environmental permitting, but we also add some in power increases. And we will have a huge amount of new renewables. So we need to have the nuclear power plants. We also need to add gas turbines, because that in the short term to balance the renewables got to be critical. So we need to get fossil-free gas turbines, and that will also increase the resilience in the market. So I think we have measures, and then we have batteries, of course, and hydrogen production that will also balance that. But also the long-term volatility is also the difficult one. Like a winter like this one, we don't have the seasonal storage more than hydropower. Hydrogen will not be the long-term storage in that perspective.
Okay, before we proceed, I've just been informed that His Majesty and the IVA, they allow us to keep on for some more minutes here, so I'm happy to, I'm trying to get down the speed a little bit. I hope that's okay for everyone. So Emma, Johan touched upon batteries, and you are representing batteries here, and I met you in Northvolt before, and now you are with the European Battery Alliance. How could the development of batteries contribute to competitiveness?
I mean, quite a lot. So batteries, of course, they will be part of the entire system. I don't know, some years ago, maybe 10 years ago, we talked about Internet of Things. And now we're starting to talk about the storage in things. We're starting to see that co-location of storage with renewables is playing an important role. In the British Islands, we're up to 4 hours now in storage capacity, but we will also see from the examples of Ukraine, and that's something I think will be growing, that important appliances will be coupled with batteries. So, I don't know, in 10 years, maybe you take for granted that when you buy your heat pump, it comes with a storage solution. Maybe you have your own power banks. I spoke to Bo Nordmark this morning, and he said that it takes 8 watt to drive a refrigerator. And that means that with a small power bank like the ones you have in your purse, you can keep your refrigerator for 4 to 5 hours. So, I mean, in all levels, storage will bring resilience to the system, which means bring costs down, of course, because then you don't have to take everything on the central side.
Thank you. And Mikael, I've known you for a long time, and you are, at the moment at least, you are busy with forming industrial partnerships, not least at Vattenfall. So what kind of industrial partnerships do you see as most pertinent for, I mean, in Sweden and in Europe, I guess, to increase competitiveness in the industry?
I think we have been very successful in the hybrid project, which we have been running now for 10 years together with LKAB and SSAB, and created a full value chain for fossil-free steel and shown that works. And the essence of the partnership is really to take out risk. I mean, to transform the value chains is really complex relations in industry, and decarbonization essentially means breaking old companionships and forming new ones, along with taking big investments, and that leads to a lot of risk. So hybrid has been successful in managing technological risk. We now know after 10 years how to do that. But there could also be other types of partnerships. We, for example, run a partnership right now with a cement company where we are on the customer side, and we help to ensure stable demand for this company in order to grow. So to sum up, essentially any type of partnership that manages to remove risk is a good partnership.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mikael. I'll make a coup d'etat. I'll make something out of the program here. We still have State Secretary Maja Lundbäck here in front of me. We know each other, so I take no real risk here. If you, the four of you, were allowed to make one wish to Maja, and not only to Maja, but to her government, and I know that Christmas has already passed, but we are approaching, as I said, the Winter Olympics. What would you wish for? Do you have one wish? So I start with you, Jacob.
Just a short reflection first. So I think it's missing in Sweden in general is that very few entities take the long-term perspective. What type of technology do we need in 10 years? Or what type of companies should we invest in now to make sure that in 10 years we have a more prosperous society? In the US, you have more government focus on that. You also have long-term investors that really think about the long-term, making sure that you create value for themselves and for the country. And I think we don't see that to the same extent in Sweden. So I think my wish for Maja specifically, I mean, a modern reactor, Gen 4 reactor in Sweden is a national asset, and I think the government needs to be involved in that. That's my wish. 1A. 1B is fast track for demo units, because in the US today it takes 45 days to review the safety analysis for a demo reactor. In Sweden it might take 3 years, it might take 5 years. The authority can't even say. And I think the 1C on my wish list is waste management responsibility. The state needs to take a stronger waste management responsibility. Otherwise, we lock new entrants out of the system.
Okay, I turn to you, Johan.
Yeah, that was many wishes, Jakob. Yeah, I know you took this. Yeah. First of all, and then Maja and I, we usually talk about age, so I would say that given older, I much more harder to understand why energy is a political issue. It is the foundation for our society, for our industry, for our welfare. So why is energy a political issue? I know it is. I know a history about that, but I think that is really one of the foundations. So make sure that we have a long-term perspective. And I think there's a good progress of getting this bipartisan view. I see the former energy minister here also, to really get this bipartisan view from a long-term perspective, because these investments are for decades or centuries. And we cannot cope with the 4-year cycle. So try to keep the bipartisan agreements and keep the system perspective. Because if we don't see the system perspective, we will suboptimize the system. So, and I'm sure you will do that.
I see the State Secretary nodding here. So Emma?
Well, we need a base industry, and we need a base industry also for the growing companies that come into this transition. If those companies do not survive in Europe and in Sweden, it's going to be very difficult for us to take part in this business. And it's easy to think that it's only the Stegra and the Northvolt and whatever of the world, but it's not. It's also the ABB, it's also the LKAB, it's also the ones providing direct materials, services, technologies, and everybody feeding into that potential industry. And if we do not take part in this, our car makers, they will have to buy the batteries from China, and it's going to take a longer time. For instance, if you take the battery industry. So we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to establish and preserve our base industry to take part in the automotive business on our land and to take part in the business globally. That's super important. And second of all, I would like to wish for a plan for collaborating with China. If we make a plan and we make the pragmatic solutions, if we say you can control 25% of the companies, or 40%, or whatever, just so that the companies know, just so they know, we will be halfway there. Thank you.
And Mikael?
Yeah, in these gloomy days, I was very happy to hear Dr. Birol pointing out the strengths of Europe, because I believe there are many. Also, what Professor Jonsson said about the strength that we have in Sweden in particular makes me want to emphasize that if we can be a stronger voice as Sweden in the EU, the Swedish industry, what we can do as Sweden and what Swedish industry can offer is to be frontrunners and lower the bar for the rest of EU. We can make these first investments, but we can better use, I think, EU's strength in being sharper in letting the transition start where it's easiest, namely in Sweden.
Thank you very much, the four of you. A big applause to the panel. My apologies for turning this into a dialogue, but I see some old ministers and people, so this is more intended as a dialogue between politics and industry. So the last word today will be given to Professor Sylvia Schwag, who is the president of the Academy. So please, Sylvia.
Thank you very much. I will not add much to this. I think this was a fascinating seminar. I want to thank Boo, who I think had the hardest job of the afternoon, making sure we finish in time. I would like to echo what His Majesty said, that this is an extremely important topic, and I think it was worth taking the time to discuss. And I will take the words from you, Dr. Birol, is that I think this is an era where energy and geopolitics are intersecting at a perhaps in a completely new way and at a completely new scale. And I think your three words of diversification, predictability, and choosing your international collaboration, but choosing them carefully, I think are very wise words. And we will absolutely invite you back to tell us how engineers can get the respect they deserve. And with that, I would like to thank you all for an excellent seminar. Thank you, Your Majesty, for coming. Thank you, Dr. Birol. Thank you to all the distinguished guests. And I think we got a lot of food for thought. And as the last speaker said, let's focus on our strengths in Europe. Let's make this work, because we can. Thank you.